Hi everyone, it's Grant Abbott speaking, and I've got lucky to have Michael Jeffries here, who's out and about
I
for
am.
this.
Hi
Yeah,
everyone, how are
so
you? How you doing,
yeah, and
Grant?
look, I just posted something last week because Michael and I have we're deep in up to our elbows in AI and all that.
We are. I've got the Tax Guru
You
AI
can
hat on
see
as well.
Tax Guru AI. If you, I think, Chris, on if you could put the link for the webinar tomorrow up there, which I think is around about 2 o'clock Queensland time, 3 o'clock business time. But yeah, just come along and see what's going on. It's pretty revolutionary.
Got some big
But
numbers on that too, Grant. It's really exciting. So
yeah, look,
can't wait.
it's yeah, wait until they actually see what it's doing, and then I'll be showing 1.2, so rather than Tax Guru 2. One of the elements there is I did a presentation going back in December last year talking about the five waves, which I then reprised for our Unstoppable Growth Conference, which was in February at the Gold Coast. And there's normally you'll get one or two waves. So, for example, I lived through the tech wreck. What were you doing? Were you the Hedge Funds Australia at that time? Around 2000 or?
Yeah, it was. So GFC was obviously a big thing. We had some interesting times, obviously, as with what happened as the markets
When the
unraveled.
credit dries up, it's
Yeah, that's
terrible.
right. And you had to lock up funds, so had to lock up redemptions because that was the rules of the fund. It wasn't that we were doing it because there's a run on it, because the rules in relation to the option positions we'd taken out with Macquarie Bank and other parties. So,
Mm.
but we're very interesting in relation to seeing markets crash, people holding 100% of their positions in employee share plans as well,
Yeah.
which obviously.
Remember
Uh,
Enron? All those people that just lost
Correct.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who was actually a partner. Can you believe
Mm.
he just got to Arthur Anderson as a partner the day before the Enron collapse, because what
Oh
happened there
no.
is their partnership was global. So he got
Mm.
in and that was it. Arthur, it was basically all
Went.
over. So very scary. But one of the elements there, and in fact, I remember 2008 having a chat with the Macquarie banker, and he's white
Mm.
in the face. I was taking him out to lunch because they were 6 weeks away. They just couldn't get any credit lines. And we're
No,
starting
that's
to see
crazy.
that in the private credit. But obviously the big one for us that none of us can preempt is obviously this. I probably should have seen it coming, the Iran, the US war, which already has done significant damage to the Australian economy and done
Mm.
significant damage to the world economy, notwithstanding the fact that even if it stopped now, it's going to have like a 2 or 3 year time span. And my gut feeling is that, April is going to be like the big blow up. Literally, who knows what's
Mm.
going to happen there? But that's obviously going to have an impact on all markets. But you did a session today with Maureen Gabriel, and
Yes,
she's brilliant on that. So, what
she's
did she have
incredible.
to say about it?
She talked about, it's interesting you saying that we should have sort of, I guess, known or the lead in. She actually,
Mhm.
she did. She saw all the signals she
I
talked
know.
about today and the reasons behind why the war is actually happening and what's driving it. So we talked about that in relation to obviously supplies and you have, it's pretty obvious there's oils at play, and that you can see the areas of the global economy that they're actually impacting. You look at the Philippines right now; they've run out of diesel, running out of fuel. I had a friend.
I know we were only just there like
Oh,
what
it's
6 weeks
crazy.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who's traveling there for the first time in about 3 weeks who called me today and said, "Should we change our plans?" And I called my friend Dean in the Philippines just to check, and he said, "Look, it's impacting regular transportation, so buses, jeepneys, and the lot.
Yeah.
But certainly, if you're a tourist, it's business as usual." But yeah,
It's
it's
probably good. There
and
won't be so much traffic on the road for a
yeah,
change.
exactly. And Maureen talked about, obviously her background is in forensics, in particular around digital assets. She talked about the digital asset economy and the impact that has with what's going on now and how Iran's utilising or attempting to utilise digital assets to strengthen their position and utilise the blockchain and things like that.
Yeah, she's a very smart woman. The
She is.
other side, because I'm about to go into quite a bit of this. The other side is also AI, because you were teaching Ben how to build agents, and
I was
both
the
of
head of
us are deep
sales.
into it. But
Yeah.
oh my God, if you can teach Ben, then that's it. It's all over as far as I'm
He was
concerned.
so excited. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Mm,
it's good once you get into that and you realize that it's really just talking or writing to a computer that has it. I was looking at China, and they've just gone absolutely mad for OpenClaw. Like
yeah.
the clawbot, they like
Mm,
everyone, grandmas, everyone is just adopting it. Whereas we
mm,
sort of sit back, but the use of agents is absolutely amazing, particularly for niche areas, and we'll bring that on with
definitely.
Tax Guru, obviously.
100%. Yeah. And you saw obviously Jensen from NVIDIA talking about it in the past 7 days in relation to the use of OpenClaw and agents. And if your technical developers aren't spending at least their salary in tokens with those, then you need to get rid of them.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with that one. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting. And I know we've got a couple of things in the wind with like your docs and around AI. So that's
Yeah.
something. But look, I'll let you get back to the walk.
Okay.
And thanks for your
Thanks.
time. And look, you get a bit of a sweat on your face. So good to see you
I
putting in
will.
the
Yeah.
hard yards, buddy. So
Try.
catch up with you soon.
Thanks. See you, everyone.
See ya. Okay. So let's go on. I'll just share my slides or share my screen. Um, I just wanted to go through quite a few thematics on where we're at and where we're going for this, and it's pretty important. You'll see there on the screen. Sorry, you'll see. Sorry. On the chat, Chris On's put in there the information tomorrow for Tax Guru. I just want to go through tomorrow, and I'll talk about that because it is quite revolutionary. And for the tax side of things, it's virtually every tax agent should have this on their desk yesterday, and I'll go through that. But that's not about today. So we've got six waves that are hitting Australia at the moment. So Mike was talking about the GFC. The GFC had a significant impact on obviously the equities market, the credit market, and also the property market. I was very lucky because I was flush with cash at that time and had a good credit line that I picked up a three-story, three-bedroom apartment in Victoria Street, Potts Point, for $960,000. It had just been passed in at $1.3 million 3 or 4 weeks beforehand. So if you've got cash, in fact, I had a chat with, I think hopefully he's on this presentation today, but a very smart man, likewise, who knows that there'll be money coming down the track if you're in cash, you'll be in a position in a year or two to make some really good investments. But we're sort of stuck. And one of the areas here is that, we need to have a look at everything that's sort of crescenting in Australia at once, because that's also going to have an impact on the government. And look, I don't have much faith in any government anywhere around the world. And I think that all the disruption is going to have a profound change. I'm not sure in which way. It's going to have a profound change on the way government works and the way that we interact for government. Suffice to say that at the end of the day, you can't we, we can't rely on the government to make decisions for us. We have to make decisions ourselves, and that's what this period of time I find very exciting about. So between 2026 and I think 2028, I've seen a couple of forecasters, Martin Armstrong, which I follow a lot on X, and his Socrates computer, saying that by 2028 we'll be up around about 225 to $250 a barrel of oil. So there's going to be, whether it's true or not, it's always what I always find is best to plan for the worst. And then obviously, if you plan for the worst, you're going to be protected, and that's fairly important. But there's six converging waves that I want to cover. First one, obviously, is the Iran shock. Look, it blew up a lot more than I would have expected, and I think all of you expected. So suddenly, all this stuff is happening, and the Strait of Hormuz is closed. I mean, surely the Americans and the Israelis thought that this was, I know they're war gamed it out for the last 20 or 30 years, but surely they would have picked us up. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We are where we are. So what is going to happen there is, and I've done a big paper on this. If you want to get the paper, just contact nush at legalbackoffice.com.au. I've done this whole thing in a paper for you, which is good. Looks at 6 months, what happens, 12 months, 24 months. So if there's still a recession, obviously, as I said, April is going to bring it all home to roost. My feeling is that the US is going to put boots on the ground. And anyway, let's not go there. But that's going to have an impact on obviously fertilizer to start off with, impact on helium, which is going to have an impact on GPU. I mean, it's just a cascading effect because we've utilized that area of the world, the Middle East area, which is basically a desert, and we've been using that as our industrial chemistry area because no one wants to bring it on shore because obviously it's too dirty, climate change and all that. And those guys don't really care about that. But anyway, that's coming home to us. So we need to have a look at what the impact is this is going to be. What would the petrol price be if it's, $250 a barrel? I mean, it's $100 a barrel, you're looking at $10 a litre. Whether that's right or wrong, but obviously it's going to be quite a severe adjustment into the economy. And it's all happy days. And where I feel, and I'm not sure whether you're the same, but I feel as though we're back in, March, when the Ruby Princess sailed into Sydney Harbour with all those COVID people, and then suddenly this COVID was taken seriously, and then all these draconian things were imposed upon us, and that's definitely where Maureen's going there. She's a brilliant lady, absolutely brilliant. But that's going to have an impact on the economy, definitely on the amount that we drive. Obviously, we need to protect diesel for that. Australia's got quite a big leverage because it's, one of the biggest LNG producers in the world, and now that, quite a sizable, I think about 20% of Qatar's LNG is blocked off, and the other side is that it can't be shipped out. I think there's some good opportunities there for us, but that's the first wave, and that to me is not even a big wave, believe it or not, which is a bit scary. So single spark can light a forest. This war is that spark, and it's probably brought forward my thinking around things. And don't worry, I've got the solutions for this a little bit later on. Not the fantastic solutions. The other one is I follow, and again, for those people who are just clients of SAPPEPAA advisors. So I'm here as the chairman of the Succession Asset Protection Estate Planning Advisors Association. So our goal is to protect your wealth. So if you've got an advisor who's a SAPPEPAA advisor, first off, tick, you're very lucky on that one because a lawyer, an accountant, a financial planner aren't going to do it for you. The strategy I'm going to give you will do it for you. Go and see your SAPPEPAA advisor. If you haven't got one, then obviously you can come and see me. I think, Nush, if you're on, if you can put down your details, contact Anushka, and then we can take it from there. One of the ones is every 18.6 years, the property cycle goes down. As I said, I was lucky enough to get it right at the bottom of the cycle, the last one. And remember, we had 2 or 3 really bad years in property just after the GFC as credit was tightening. Obviously, with you don't know how it works out, but obviously with what's going on in terms of the Iran-US war, credit is significantly tightening at this present point in time. You can see that with the tick up in the bond prices. It's going to be interesting. There'll be an inflationary shock, but to me, and look, I did economics at uni, and I followed it all, but it's going to be inflation, but it's also going to go into recession, maybe even depression. Who knows what's going on? So we may end up, and I was smart enough or old enough to live through the stagflationary period in the 70s. For some of you may remember that. There were 18 or 20% home loan interest rates. And can you imagine these days a lot of the home loans that people are sitting on have been in fairly low rate environments, believe it or not, over the last 10 years. If they took up to 10 or 12 or 15%, what's going to happen? You know, you don't need to be a Einstein to look at that. There's one of the ones I'll talk about shortly when we get to AI. On top of this, the government is now starting to look at clamping back on negative gearing, reducing the capital gains tax discount. So actually doing everything. The classic one is to have a look down at Victoria. Hi to everyone on the Let's Talk of Victoria. Jump on the chat and tell us your experience around Victoria if you're a property investor down there. Well, they're just layering in so many taxes there that already the property market in Victoria has dropped around about 6 to 8%, I think, in the last year. Sydney is starting to drop as well, but we'll talk about that. Commercial collapse. If we end up going to a situation that we go back to COVID and we think about lockdowns, but if all the governments, so they already are doing it all around Asia and Australia, that we should be doing a lot more work from home. Again, that commercial property in the city, which already has only just not really made it back, all the other businesses in the city around that are going to find it very tough. Again, if there's a lot of money going to petrol and all that, we can already start to see a lot of people aren't going on their Easter breaks because of fuel problems and the costs there. So that again, that's going to have an impact on tourism around the world. So people, you're going to have those cheap airfares, and that's going to impact Australia. It's going to impact everyone. Now, if you've got the money and you protect it, you're actually going to be in a fantastic position. So the property cycle, it was predicted to end at the end of 26 and going through to 28. I would say that I don't know how the guys do it, but they've mapped it out. Fred Harris and Phil Anderson, they've mapped it out. Jump onto YouTube, it's really good. But they've mapped it out 300-400 years back in the past, and everything seemed to be going there. The next one, so cycles don't break, they complete whether we're ready or not, and that's the case. AI, as I said, is quite significant. Jump on to Tax Guru presentation tomorrow. I saw over in the IRS, the IRS in the US are now using Palantir models to potentially work out who to target for audits. My feeling is that the tax office already got 4 AI agentic models running and just in a beta testing at the moment. But effectively, all of us will end up having an AI agent check over our stuff once every month or every 3 months. So again, as Michael said, if Ben's using agents and stuff like that, I would encourage you all to build your agents. It's like, it's super exciting just to see all this thing come around, which is fantastic. But that now means that agents do things for you. They are employees effectively, and they can be very niche. So I've got one with Tax Guru I'll explain tomorrow, but I've got one that will then, I can feed it in a case. So it's a case just recently that came out on whether brothers who had luxury cars from their family trust, whether it was subject to FBT or not. Pretty boring for most people, but it's quite useful for a lot of people as a tax area. But I fed that into an agent. The agent cuts it all up into 280 word blocks, looks at a specific issue of the case, good case, bad case study. So our agent, tax guru agent, can look at a to-do list, checklist, and it cuts it all up into that. Whereas before I used to have like 2 or 3 employees doing that. Now basically does it effectively all really quickly. So again, needs to be checked by a lawyer with 30 years experience. But again, that's a role that used to be for a person, but now it's actually been automated there. So what we're doing is with work from home, we're also going to start to see a lot of public servants, their roles will be automated. I know the guys over in Philippines that Michael was talking about. I've got a good friend over there, Marco, who has actually built a whole model where agents take each position. So you can be one person running a business, and an agent will look after finance, marketing, sales, and that will be coming out a little bit later on. We're building it for accountants. But that basically means that we don't need any employees. And so if we take it out and we see that like 5 or 10 or 15 or 20% of employees are no longer needed over the next 3 to 5 years, and my feeling is we're now moving this really quickly, then if you lose your job to an AI agent, you're not going to get another job. You may actually start to use agents and build yourself your own little small business, which I think is fantastic. But in that meantime, in the transition, if you've got a really hefty mortgage and you're laid off, what happens to that mortgage? And I think that the Australian banks are going to have some really hard times ahead. And I do know one very famous real estate agent across Australia, very, very, very famous, high ticket and all that, just in the process of selling all his properties. Not so much because of the Iran-US war, but because he's seen what AI agents have done. He's actually changed his whole real estate agency to now make it 50% AI agents rather than personal flesh and blood. And he's selling all these properties. And his thesis is property is going to go down by 50%. It goes back to wave two, and he'll be able to buy those properties back at a very cheap price as well. Um, so Phil, can you recommend someone who can develop AI agents for our firm? Absolutely. So in fact, you can do it so easily. I need to just do a bit of training on that for you. I'll show you. Remember, we have, if you're on Tax Guru or Strategist AI, we have that training every 2 weeks. So I'll actually show you how to build that. Honestly, it is, if Ben can do it, Phil, because you're smart, you can do it really easily. It's amazing. Um, uh, Kendra, apparently gold went up 2,000% in 73 with that oil shock. Yeah, again, use your grok, use your agents and all that to look at that. So again, if you need anything today, you've got Nush basically there. So Nush, a legal back office. So she's my go-to person. So honestly, I think the Iran-US war is going to exacerbate that for that particular area. So ATO doesn't need more people; it needs more processing power. That's true. It scares me and all the accountants on there. Again, if you've got a SAPPEPAA advisor, you're in a good position. We are getting very close to all the solutions. I remember 2008, 2009. I used to travel around the countryside and do a lot of presentations. I don't do that many anymore. Thank you, COVID, and it's just the way it is. We've got our SAPPEPAA conference up in Bali coming up in October, so fingers crossed that that's still going ahead. Hopefully, everything will be done by then. But I remember bumping into people in West Australia because I was doing a lot of work over there, and I get an occupational health and safety person was earning $200,000 or 250 because China decided at that time, while America was in a recession, that it was an opportune time to effectively get ahead of America. So it spent a lot of money building its infrastructure, building its GDP, and really, doing a leapfrog. And have a look now; they are quite easily the king of the automakers when it comes around to electric vehicles. And look at it now. I mean, electric vehicles. No one cares about climate change, but electric vehicle is gold now in this current climate environment. But China is not coming to our rescue this time. They've got the Simandou mine, like we used to have a lot of iron ore. Now, if you have a look, the Fortescue, BHP, Rio, they're all complaining about the negotiation skill or what China's doing negotiating. You can't pay in US dollars anymore; it's all in yuan. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. And again, Australia, was acquiring a lot of petrol and diesel from China. China just simply said, no, that's for us now. So, China's not going to be there for us as we expected in the future. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, we just have to realise we're quite a small one. So the engine that powered Australia for 2 decades is slowing, and basically there's nothing there to replace it. We have got some fantastic resources, LNG, but we don't make any money out of it tax-wise, which is crazy. This is the big one that we have to worry about. So we've got all these structural inputs when we have a look at the budget. And so this is where we're leading to. Wave five is the most important. So all this other stuff is going to happen. But structurally, NDIS is increasing. I saw yesterday the Labor Health Minister was just saying NDIS is completely out of control. And this isn't the shadow. This is the Labor Health Minister at a forum basically saying NDIS is out of control. It's going from 50 billion at the moment to double in size to $100 billion, within the next 7 or 8 years. So that's going to have quite a significant impact. So NDIS goes up to age 65. Then after 65, you've then got aging. So aged care, both of them are increasing like this. And if you have a look at 60% of all Australian employment over the last, and I think it's going to go like that, Australian employment over the last 3 years has been from it's all government, aged care and NDIS. So that in itself is just a runaway train. My mum effectively is in aged care. She's 92. We don't have to pay that much per month for that. She gets nurse attendee, she gets 3 square meals a day, plus, plus, plus. She's put on 10 kilos, believe it or not, since she's in there. But there was 2.5 million of that cohort. So that was the people through the war generation, the depression and all that. Now, if we have a look, is the baby boom generation on the back end of that. That's people born between, so they're currently age 81, back to about age 63. There's 5.5 million of us. So if you think the pressure on aged care now, what it's going to be like when the baby boom generation comes through, it's going to be quite scary. So again, these are the fallouts the government is actually have to fund. And on top of that, healthcare funding, childcare funding, actually childcare because that's decreasing anyway, but healthcare funding is going to again take off. With obviously the Iran-US war, that's going to have an impact. We're already seeing excise cut. AI is going to cut personal income taxes, which is a major source of revenue for the government. It's going to increase unemployment. Will we get to universal basic income? If you don't know what that is, go and have a look at it or have a chat with your SAPPEPAA advisor around that one. So again, there's all these budgetary pressures, which is where we're going now. So what we're going to do is we're going to see more and more taxes. I talked about it. We already know reduction in capital gains tax discount, negative gearing. Both of those probably not a good thing in a falling property market. When we have a look at inheritance tax, so intergenerational transfer tax or inheritance tax or death taxes, that will be on the cards, I guarantee. Again, the government's just simply going to say, well, yep, we're in a fiscal hole here. And there's a lot of baby boomers or older people who've got a lot of wealth. So when that's passed on to the next generation, it should be taxed and spread throughout the younger generations, which is essentially what they're looking at doing. So again, that's coming down the track. Wealth taxes, if we have a look over in the UK. So if I have a look at the first one, intergenerational transfer tax in the UK, similar back to Australian dollars, it's first $600,000 is tax-free. And after that, it's then taxed at 40%. So if you're the last person standing out of your couple, you've got $4 million in assets, having a nice house in Sydney or whatever, plus shares or investment properties, then the first $600,000 is tax-free. The remaining $3.4 million is taxed at 40%. So you're paying around about $1.4 million in tax. And that's just too juicy an option there for the government. And again, it's like, well, why we should let these children go through? It should be spread around amongst all children. And that's what they had a summit for last year, productivity summit. The other one, the wealth tax, that'll probably come down on, we've already got land taxes in Australia. Over in the UK, if you've got a mansion that's worth, well, not a mansion that's worth more than £3 million, you have to pay an annual fee of 1%. If it's more than 7 million, you have to pay 2% of whatever the net wealth, not of the land, but actually of the whole property. So they're coming down. Superannuation reform, that's sort of in, but I think in the falling market, I honestly feel that equity market is going to fall quite considerably. So whatever taxes they're expecting on that is not going to be significant. Wealth taxes doesn't mean whether it goes up or down. Inheritance tax doesn't mean it goes up or down. They're always going to tax you. So this is the one we've got to be really careful for. Okay, so when we have a look at that, what are some of the solutions? What are they going to do? Go to NDIS and tell a whole lot of people who are disabled they can't, they were going to reduce their benefits? I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, the reality is essentially these six waves don't arrive separately. Obviously, we got quite a significant economic impact. A couple of things we need to go on the front foot, and you don't want to go too far down the track and come back to this presentation saying, oh, I should have done, better. A couple of things is I want to show you like 3 or 4 strategies. The slides will be available, so we'll send those out to you. Have a look at the Family Wealth Protection book that I've got. You can get that. I don't make any money out of it. I can't, so it's too cheap. So it's on Kindle. So if you have a look there, Family Wealth Protection for Generations to Come, it's now up to its second edition. You can get on Kindle, which you can read on your phone, etc. Have a read of that. That's absolutely crucial. So that's the start of your journey. A lot of people have read it in a day. It's very easy to read. Guru's Guide to Self-Managed Super Funds. Look, if you want a PDF copy of that, contact Noosh. If you want a PDF copy for both of them, I don't really care. I'm happy to give them away. I'd rather you have the information and move on it pretty quickly. So a few things, quite apart from all the crap that we just went through. The other one the biggest area that is impacting families now is obviously separations and divorces. Not so much for mums and dads, although it's going to be for that next generation. So I always use the classic tale of my daughter. Her best friend was looking at the guy for 4 years. Grandfather passed away, left a large estate. Grandma decided to gift her a property, nice little property, $1.9 million in Brighton in Melbourne. And then her boyfriend left her, went to the family lawyer. She had to sell the property, give him $900,000. Where it would be, there's easy strategies for that. The same thing, you never, ever, ever give direct assets to your children, because as soon as you do, it becomes matrimonial property. So we need to make sure it's always going to be protected. So that's the first thing. Second one, so that's the first gift I'm giving to you. The second one is you never give any money to your children. 20% of all family law cases in Australia revolve, because usually family law cases, there's a property settlement, it's all done within a year or two. 20% of all cases that get to court is because parents say, well, that money that I transferred to my child was a loan, it was not a gift. There's no documentation. So always, if you've given money to an adult child who's in a relationship, you want to go back and make it a loan, and you can again make it a loan. But what we do is we do a deed that ratifies that it was a loan, it was a verbal loan and all that. That's going to save a lot, because again, if they get split, there's a property, you can call that loan back, particularly if it goes into a trust. Contact Noosh at legalbackoffice.com.au for any of that sort of stuff. So that's the second thing, a good protection. Protect the money that you've given out to the kids. My kids have been on loan since age 14, so they owe me quite a lot of money. Now, they haven't got the money, I can guarantee it, because I'm still paying out a lot of money for them. But if something happens, and I love my son-in-law, both my son-in-law leaves, that's when I actually going to pull that money back. And you can make it nil interest loan, but it turns into interest right back from the start if there's a separation or divorce. Again, just simple structuring, legal documentation that actually will stand in front of the court. So family law, it's not just for your generation. If we have a look here, what we're doing is family wealth and SMSF protection for your bloodline for generations to come. The other one that we need to be very careful of is if a lot of this automation and number 60 on the list of in fact, it's number 50 on the list of the top 680 professions, which are going to be denuded by AI. And number 50 is actually number one. I don't know if anyone can think of what number one is. It's a history teacher. Is number one is effectively obliterated now in terms of AI. I don't know if you've seen actually now making videos with Imagine on Grok of a person being in Pompeii going around talking to Pompeii residents. Anyway, it's crazy. But number 50 is lawyers. So it means that there's a lot of lawyers out there. If they're not doing stuff, if they're not building transactions, again, like eDocs, the company I built with Michael, and the team, we've got 250 legal documents on that platform and, they're brilliant. So you don't need to go to lawyers anymore. It means they're going to litigate. And so litigation is obviously a fairly big one. Again, when you pass away, your children, so in Victoria, children, stepchildren, grandchildren can make a claim on your estate. If they feel as though they should have been looked after, they make a claim on the estate, and they're going to find a no-win, no-fee lawyer will take this up as better. So for what's the predicted timeline of impact for property prices falling? That's a really good one, Vanessa. I'm not sure. Have a look at Phil Anderson or Fred Harris on YouTube. I just follow these guys. They seem to be pretty good, but it's supposed to be towards the end of this year. But I know with the AI, the real estate agent who's been spruiking up property prices is selling them all straight away. SMSF is a good, better. Contact Nush. She'll give you all the materials that I've got. I'm happy to give you absolutely everything because I want you to be informed for that one. One thing there, if you are let me just go through. If you are a sole director, so let me go through and do a story. British royal families, I've modelled a lot of my strategies on the British royal family and also what they call life trusts over it or living trusts over in the US. But you need to have a line of succession. So Succession as Protection Estate Planning Advisors Association. So we do have a site. It's called SAPPEPAA. And again, if you're lucky enough to have a advisor there, have a look at sappepa.org. You can either be an advisor or there's a lot of information there on Legacy Builders Portal. In fact, Anushka, can you put a lot of the stuff that we've got here today, get Tira to put up on the Legacy Builders? There's no cost on that one. Again, it's a free site for you looking at. But Succession is the main one. Asset protection, that's for family wealth. So that's fairly important. So again, if you've got a sole director, if something happens to you, just read this. Do you know what I mean? Read it. This is ASIC. This is not like, there's no fear mongering. It's who's going to pay the staff wages, who's going to look after that. So you need to have a line of succession for your enduring power of attorney. Those people can make health and financial decisions for you in case you get sick. You need to have a line of succession. If you've got a will and you've got an executor who manages the will for you, you need to have a line of succession. If the first person is not there, who's the second, who's the third? Likewise with companies, all companies, whether it's a corporate trustee for a self-managed super fund, corporate trustee for a family trust, whether it's a bucket company, that's a company that sweeps up any dividends or distributions from a discretionary trust. If it's an operational company, an IP company, you need to have that line of succession. Otherwise, there can be a danger there. So, again, have a chat with your SAPPEPAA advisor or again, Nush is your go-to person. Okay, so we get to number one. This is our castle. So this is my go-to, and I'll go through a number of reasons. So first off, the trust has been around since the 12th century. Did you know companies weren't even invented until the 17th century? SMSFs, essentially they were small super funds before, but they effectively came into existence in 1994. So they're really like Johnny come latelys, believe it or not. But trusts have been around for a long time. They've got their own set of laws called the law of equity, and that sits outside any legislation, which is great. So it means that when I or your SAPPEPAA advisor builds in clauses or rules into your trust, they basically stay. So, for example, I could build a law in there if I've got an alcoholic child. In fact, I did one today for a client, is that they don't get any distributions from the trust unless they've been sober for 6 months. So again, you can basically do that. Or spendthrifts. So I'll go through a few things. So if we've got our wealth in a family protection trust, there's three core positions. The first one is the company. And remember, this is family wealth protection. It says family protection trust. So we always have a company. And companies aren't that expensive, and they're not there to run businesses. They're just there to be trustee of the trust, essentially, because the beneficiaries you see down here, those beneficiaries don't have any right or entitlement to the assets of the trust. The trustee does. And that's fairly important because that's why it protects the beneficiaries from litigation and family law. As I said, if, going back to my daughter's friend Sophia, if her grandmother had put money into the family protection trust and lent it to her, even though the title of the property was in her name, she wouldn't have had any equity. Understand that? No equity means a good strategy, because if no equity, you can't get litigated against. The tax office can't take an action against you if you're in business. ACCC, false and misleading, which is coming up all the time, can't take you down. And the big one is if your business is based on tourism, if your business is based on diesel, doing anything, if we're going into a depression, a lot of businesses already here in Adelaide, I just walk around the city centre or where I'm in Adelaide, and there's for lease. All these businesses have gone bankrupt or into liquidation. So again, if you are in a business, you need to set up a family protection trust. I'm going to give you another strategy very shortly. Your net wealth has to be zero. Your personal net wealth of yourself and your spouse must be zero. Absolutely. Because no one's going to litigate you if you've got no net wealth. And I think that's important. And I'll show you for that. But we need to put it into a castle or a vault. And that's our family protection trust. So we've got the trustee. We don't have individual trustees because that's stupid, because, if you're going to get sued, why would you be an individual? You want to have that trustee. And the same thing, if you're the trustee, if you're a director, remember that line of succession is crucial. So usually we set these up for families, and then spouses or partners will be the kings and queens. So again, this is model. This is what we call our Buckingham Palace of Trusts. So what will happen is, king and queen, one dies, the other one takes over. And then what we do is then when they both die, it then splits between the children who, in exactly the proportion, exactly the position that you feel it. So this is a way to not circumvent, but basically if you leave personal assets, and you've got stepchildren, children, Victoria grandchildren, New South Wales, you can see ex-spouses, they can all make a claim on your estate. But provided you've transferred wealth in here, it's been more than 3 years since you transferred in New South Wales, or instantaneously for any other state, then that sits outside any family provision claim. Family provision is that, someone in the family believes they should be looked after in the will, and that's just the way it is. In New South Wales, even if you've got joint assets where everything goes to your spouse, they can still get caught by stepchildren, etc. But when you both pass away, then it goes down to the children. You can leave one child out. You can have children who've got 40%. If they're disabled, we use, which is great. In fact, this was a huge win today for a client. They've got a special disability trust. They had $400,000 from their spouse's will. It was sitting in one of the daughter's names, and the son. So the daughter was looking after it for the son, but she was really worried about it, worried about the tax office. So we're going to set up a special disability trust, transfer that in. There's no capital gains tax, no stamp duty transferring properties or shares in there. So that's a good thing. And then we can have a home in there for our disabled child to live in. And that's effectively assets test exempt. So they'll still get the disability pension and have an additional $832,000 of shares, income, or fixed interest, deposits, or another property in there. So again, special disability trust, not going to look at that, but that can happen now if you've got a disabled child or on death. It really doesn't make any difference. So again, we can split, but because it's governed by the laws of equity, we can have a small split for one. We can actually leave one child out if we want. But if we've got children who are under the age of 18 or 25, they're probably not in a position, to really run these sort of things. It's good to have a guardian. Most SAPPEPAA advisors are also board of guardians, accredited members. They can step in, and so that any big decision making around that trust, if there's pressure. So quite often I'll see that there might be a couple of daughters and a very aggressive alcoholic son or whatever. And rather than have the daughter or one of the daughters stand over that, because obviously they don't want the son to take control. These are all separate sub-trusts. The guardian effectively is the standover, not the standover, but you need to breach the guardian before you actually get to the trustee. So the guardian is really important, and most SAPPEPAA advisors are also board of guardians members. The important thing here is only bloodline beneficiaries are classified as beneficiaries. So again, remember, beneficiaries don't have any right or entitlement to any of the assets of the fund, which again protects for litigation of family law. In fact, there was a good case last year and we're talking about $16 million sitting in one of these trusts because it was a lineal descendants bloodline style trust. Effectively, the family court threw out that it was matrimonial, couldn't be included as matrimonial property. So again, bloodline beneficiaries, it can only ever be bloodline of the original couple that's starting there. So for example, if one couple passes away, goes and gets into another relationship, has a child from that one, although it's bloodline for that, it's not bloodline for the original. They'd have to go and set up their own separate family protection trust. This is probably the most important. It's normally a throwaway that I give, but I want you to understand this if you are in business. In business, I have a company usually, and in that company, I run my business. But inside the business, I've got goodwill, I've got logos, I've got marketing processes that I use. For example, being marketing agents that I now have. These are all valuable tools for us. The problem about it is my business goes down because of the a recession or depression coming into the economy, then I lose that company altogether. The better thing to do is transfer those key things, agents, IP or whatever, over into this asset company, this IP company. And generally there's a capital gains tax, depending on the size. I mean, if you're a $100 billion company, obviously it's not going to work. But if you're a small business, effectively you can transfer those assets over. There's going to be no capital gains tax. And then once it's over there, it's now sitting under your family protection trust. So it becomes like a turret of the family protection trust. It's now protected. And then what we do is we license it back to the operations company and we keep this clean. So there's no assets. And if this goes into liquidation, we can then set up another operations company. So that's pretty advanced business protection strategy. When it comes around to your wills, you won't see this from any other lawyer in Australia. I reviewed someone's will today. It was shocking anyway. What we want to do is we want to make sure we've got protection. So again, If I've got a family protection trust, and if you've got an existing discretionary trust, we can upgrade that to a family protection style trust, because most discretionary trusts are just simply tax vehicles. Same look and feel, but what we do is the principal beneficiary of your estate is going to be your family protection trust. So we can transfer properties in, we can transfer shares in, and there's no capital gains tax or stamp duty at that time. We also put inside your will a testamentary trust. So again, same look, same feel, but the family protection trust is something we set up now. Testamentary trust is something that's set up at the time of the will. Now, generally, we want everything to go in here, but there are some tax advantages for children, grandchildren under the age of 18 here for testamentary trust. So we might have our adult children in here and our grandchildren in here. What's the best one? I don't know until you pass away, but we need to have both in there inside your will, because if they're not in there, then we can't use that. So it's almost like going to McDonald's. Like one option, you never pass asset directly to children or anywhere unless it's like gifts like brooches or stuff like that. Do people still use brooches anyway? So we've got the trust or the testamentary trust, which is really important. So that's the one. The other one that's really important, and this is what I would be talking about for most people. This is called the protector. It's a strategy that's been around for 20 years, but I've sort of upgraded it. Again, I'm just going to gloss over it and give you the thematic. If you need to get into more information, make a booking with Nush at legalbackoffice.com.au to come and see me, and I'll look at your personal circumstances. Or if you've got a SAPPEPAA advisor, again, they're the best people to talk to. What this does, and this is where we get to zero equity. Remember, that's what we want. One for family provision. But if we go into recession and depression, you need to protect any equity you have. So what we do is we look at your net worth. We look at the net worth in your family, home, investment properties, cars. Cars would not actually be able to transfer over the family protection trust. We're into that asset company. Watches we can transfer over. There's not going to be CGT generally, artwork, etc. Company shares, we might be able to transfer if there's no CGT. But the real hindrance is, family home, we don't want to transfer over. One is going to be a stamp duty, but we lose a capital gains tax exemption on family home. But I don't think the government's going to knock that one out for a while. So you can see here, I've worked out the net value, my net wealth, and you want to make sure it's as high as possible. So my home's worth $2 million, but I've got $1 million bank loan on it. So it's now my net wealth in it is $1 million. And it could be yourself, it could be a spouse, or it could be joint asset. It doesn't make any difference. Same with crypto, same with shares. I've actually done a lot of clients with crypto. November the 28th, I think I did a YouTube, and I said to a lot of people in crypto when it was 128,000 Bitcoin, I said, it's not a bad time to sell and get some profit off the table. A lot of people didn't. Anyway, that's life. So what we want to do is we want to actually transfer that wealth over to a family protection trust, and we use a financial instrument called a promissory note. If you've got a line of credit, we can do it direct cash, which is even better. But if not, then we use a promissory note that transfers our wealth over to the family protection trust. It doesn't escape trustee and bankruptcy. It helps a lot because it's a 4-year clawback. But if you do it now, you're going to be fine. And then what we do is the promissory note is a short-term debt instrument. So what we do is we transfer it to a long-term debt instrument called a loan, and then we take a second mortgage. If you haven't got any mortgage on your house, we take a first mortgage. If the bank is in there, we take a second mortgage. Same with the shares, we take a general security deed over it. Car, if you're not transferring it over because of too much tax or whatever, then what we do is we take a security deed over it. So now all our wealth is in our family protection trust. So again, if we get litigated, and look, I'm only going to tell you once, get yourself down to zero net wealth, because if you have a look at the wins that are coming to us, as I said at the moment, where I feel like I don't think I finished the story, is there's a tsunami coming But we're in that position, if you go and have a look at a lot of like the avalanche or whatever, the water's being sucked out from the tsunami, and then suddenly the tsunami hits us. It's the same as that avalanche. Oh, look, everything's okay, it's all controlled, but it is going to hit us at some point in time, which is important. So the protector is a really important vehicle for us. The other one is that for those of you who got self-managed super funds, look, it's perfect. You want to be doing your investing in self-managed super funds. You know, if you want to sell your property, contribute into super, or don't contribute to super unless it's commercial property. But have a chat with us. Again, it's protected for trustee and bankruptcy. It's got some really good tax advantages. It does have a bit of a death tax, but again, we have to balance that off the intergenerational wealth transfer taxes that are coming. Special disability trust I've talked about as well. So just going back, because it's now virtually up to the hour, this is recorded. We're going to send you out the recording. This will get that, and also Chris on from our team. I'll send you all the slides, both decks. I'll send you a paper as well that I've done on all of this. Have a read of my Family Wealth Protection book. I know it's a little bit of homework for you, but this is the important time to be doing homework. I guarantee it. I promise you that one is that we are seeing we're seeing stuff coming in, and if we've got a good SAPPEPAA advisor like my mate Rodney Fox there, or a lot of the team, right? You know, Katie Rosie, use those guys because it is always going to be better to be, if you can see a tsunami running, I'd rather be, you know, in a car speeding as far as we can. This is like one of those, remember the 90s and the 2000s, the disaster movies? It's happening. So let's get it all sorted. Again, it's up to you. My job is just to simply give you the information, congeal it all, and then in 2 or 3 years later, you're either going to say, oh God, Grant was right. I did all this. Thank goodness for that. Or, oh, I didn't listen to, well, how many people are not on this webinar in the world or webinar in the world at the moment that should be? And I feel sorry for them. But anyway, look, the main thing is we're going through a lot together, and it's just going to happen. There's a lot of change going on with AI as it was without all this other stuff. But again, if you've got your house protected, it's like being a tortoise with a shell. You're going to feel a lot better than not having that shell. Better to do it rather than not. Anyway, Grant Abbott, signing off. Great to see you all.